the whole session or the whole course, step by step, going through all these different aspects. I rarely use it like that. I do sometimes, but rarely. Many more times I will use it by starting from some bit, maybe sales and leaks, or depends where, or maybe goals, depends where we want to go, and then see what naturally emerges. And I think we can give ourselves as trainers the permission not to be linear and rigid following the framework, but to really dive into what emerges as most relevant in the context of our workshop goal or the coaching goal. So it's easy for people to get tied into a framework. I should use it like this or not use it at all. But I really want to say, hey, own it, adjust it, adapt it, play with it. If some part you don't really understand or it doesn't really resonate, kick it out.
I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know.
Our goal as coaches, as facilitators, as people working with people, to put it broadly, is to enable others to have a flourishing life, where we can leverage our strengths, pursue our purpose, and achieve our goals. Mirna from Happiness Academy and Trainers Toolbox is all about this. She's a positive psychology expert, she loves working with metaphors, and in her main venture, Trainers Toolbox, she helps facilitators to use all of these tools. When the two of us connected, we obviously talked a lot about strength psychology, where apparently we are both pretty big nerds in. But one thing that became very apparent for me in the conversation with Mirna is how strengths are also often a very cognitive and language-based concept. Mirna taught me a metaphor, the Sailboat Metaphor, which is an entire workshop or coaching session flow that combines concepts like goal setting, working with values, and most importantly, also working with strengths. So on this episode, we dig into all the above, what makes working with strengths a powerful tool, both for working with groups and with individuals, and how you can use sailboats to make it much more memorable, intuitive, and structure your entire journey. Enjoy. Okay, so there's two things we have in common. On the one hand, it's a passion for positive psychology, for strength psychology in particular, and also for working visually. So to get us started, can you tell us a bit about these principles and what make them powerful in your practice?
Yes, I think when I started working with positive psychology, it was for three big reasons. And today, when I talk with any other trainers and anyone really, how to work with positive psychology and why, I keep coming back to these kind of three pillars, I would say, what positive psychology can give us as a framework, as a trainers or facilitators or coaches. And one of them is principles. And it's just these principles, building on positive, putting things in the spotlight that are the best in people, putting things we want to grow and nourish in some way. And very often we talk about this as this plant metaphor, the idea that if you have a plant and you want it to grow, to make it flourish, it needs the right environment, and you really want to focus on giving it sun and water. And when we look into some of the previous self-development approaches or different approaches in learning, often we focus on pulling out the weeds, trimming the plant, but not so much on providing the sun and water. So this idea of principles, let's look into what is flourishing. Let's see how we can support better, provide that nourishment, that water, that sunshine for what is the best in people. And we have that mindset in positive psychology. And we very much have it in strengths as one part of positive psychology or in strengths-based approach. Then the second thing is, I think, content, just these ideas, also very present in strengths, the theory that's data built, that's research built, that's science built. And then the second thing that positive psychology gives us is this valuable bunch of content and ideas and models and insights that are all very science-based and that are really built on research, because positive psychology, while looking into positive things, it's very rigorous in research-based stuff and in looking that it builds things through proper science, and that it really, the insights that it provides us, that they have a strong foundation. So I love also using it, and I loved using it before I fully focused on positive psychology, as this source of ideas, source of models, source of data that can really support many topics we work with in training, from leadership to communication to even presentation skills and things like that. I'll give you an example there as well. PERMA, one of the most familiar frameworks for well-being, which is by Seligman, one of the, let's say, fathers and main authors in positive psychology. It talks about positive relationships, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And that's one of the frameworks that we can use to work with somebody's well-being in a very simple way, even if we don't have a background in positive psychology to work with a team or with individuals. And then the third thing, my favorite that we get and that I get from positive psychology is this rich toolbox of different tools and practical interventions and methods. And that's back to that engineering that you were mentioning at the beginning. I think where we really get excited is what can we do with this to actually impact somebody's skills or somebody's well-being for the better? Which tool can we show them, share with them, practice with them, teach them? I work much more with giving people tools than guiding them through the frameworks or the steps where they get some result. I work much more with, here is some of the tools that would be valuable for you. Let's try it together. Now go home, try it on your own in the context of workshops usually. And then when you come back for the next module or the next workshop, then we maybe discuss a bit, what did you learn? How did it apply in your own life? Where do you need to adjust it a bit? But I think this toolbox for me, especially looking into psychology in general, I love it because it comes with so much practical things and with interventions that are really built step by step, that you can immediately test it out, give it to people. Maybe my only little resentment with positive psychology is that being the science, sometimes it gets a bit more slow than the practice. So very often some things we would want to know and want to have more data on, we don't get it as fast as we would like, and we have to wait for research to catch up to really get some of it. I think strengths-based approach with Herit is exactly the same thing. It also gives us a lot of data about strengths, a lot of interesting insights, a lot of interesting models, but also many different tools. And of course, some of the principles of how can we see people more through their strengths, not through the things that they should improve, and just this inherently, I would say, positive approach or kind of approach more directed towards flourishing.
Awesome. Amazing. So if I'm trying to summarize or highlight a few aspects of what you shared, it is this focus on what's working. So if we use this super nice garden metaphor where we would say, okay, there's a few weeds in the background, they are fine, we just live with them. But what we really want to do is to really grow this plant and make it really nice and big and flourishing. And this is in a way what we do with positive psychology in general and with strengths in particular. And then what's also awesome about positive psychology is that we have this big variety of tools that are all evidence-based, and that is like proper research put into them. And no matter where we are in training, facilitation, coaching also, we can kind of look what is suitable for us to work with there.
Yeah, definitely. And just maybe to add to that plant part, it's not necessarily we want to ignore the weeds. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I think it's more about prioritizing the nourishment, because the idea is maybe we can do a bit of both, but in that it's easy to get distracted by pulling out the weeds and neglect the other part. And that will just not be sustainable. That will not strengthen the plant. Yet if we do ignore the weeds and just do the sun and water, that will be enough. But ideally, we want to do a bit of both. So we do want to still keep that. That's also, I think, important thing that sometimes is maybe, misassessed or misjudged in positive psychology, that it only looks into the positive and ignores everything else, and that it wants to replace any other approaches that do differently. But I think positive psychology is really looking to be a complementary approach. As it started as a trend that said we are looking into negatives too much, we need to pull a bit on the other side. But it's not trying to be like this denial machine where it's like, just look at the positive, nothing negative matters. Not at all. It tries to create balanced picture where positive is leading a bit, let's say.
Yeah, awesome. I recently read a book by Oliver Berkman, which was about the negative approach to happiness. And this was pretty much positive psychology. But he was also, I think, very much repelled by the positive thinking trend, and that we only look at the positive. And then I think a lot of the examples he gave, for example, were from Stoicism, where you actually really dig into the what could go wrong. And by familiarizing with them, you build resilience, where again, we are back at positive psychology, I guess. So yeah, that is a very good disclaimer that you give there. And as a means of getting to know you a bit, how do you actually use that now in your work at Trainers Toolbox? And how does that look like in the session room, if you want?
Yeah, I think I use positive psychology always in two different ways and in two different aspects. Even on Happiness Academy, which prioritize the content for positive psychology, and in Trainers Toolbox, where I prioritize the content that's how can trainers make workshops better on every level. I think on both of these, there were always two approaches. And one of them was behind the scenes. So kind of like as the principles in my own work, as the approaches, as the tools, as the powerful questions or metaphors or different little bits that influence how we go through certain learning journey. I'll give you an example. One of the things I do at Trainers Toolbox is also a course, fairly short one, for experienced trainers that's about building emotional journeys. And that course, it's not just about positive psychology. It's how to bring in more emotions into a training room in a way that really supports the learning, that makes things more memorable, deeper, more engaging. So it builds more, I would say, on emotions. But big part of content of that course comes from positive psychology. Because, of course, many of emotions you want to build in the training room are positive, and the ones maybe that are not, you still want to see how to work with them in a constructive way and in a resilient way and so on. So very often I'll bring in a lot of content, even in things that are not officially a positive psychology course, but that will just be different bits and pieces. Also strengths-based approach, like when working on Train the Trainer, we look a lot into, hey, what are your strengths in the way? Not so directly. We work with feedback. And then in that, we keep tying in more of focus on strengths and on these more authentic things that they're strong at. On the second hand, there is also this more direct content or tools that I'm sharing. So I'm also doing a course that's really positive psychology for trainers and coaches and facilitators. So it's like, hey, come, get the tools. You already have the training knowledge. That is really content focused in terms of positive psychology and tools focused. But I think in many other bits, I also bring in different content and different pieces. For example, flow, one of my favorite concepts in positive psychology, being in the zone, being deeply immersed, is amazing state for learning. So I think every trainer should know about what flow is and how to build more for flow, how to challenge people to the right level, not to under-challenge them, not to overwhelm them. I think these are all pieces of content that we can plug in. So I would say ultimately it's these two things. On one side, principles in the background. How can we, use them as the foundation even without talking about them so openly, just as habits in the way we work. And on the other hand, also this content and data and tools and tangible little things that plug into different places.
Awesome. Thanks. Then let's maybe dig a bit deeper into that. And can you explain a bit more how strengths and this concept flow that you just shared, how does that interweave and come together?
Ooh, that's a tough one or tricky one. Flow is based on some different preconditions, not just on the strengths. And flow is a state where we are very deeply immersed in something we are doing, but it's also something that's challenging for us. And people most often encounter it, let's say, in sports or maybe in arts, when doing something creative, sometimes at work, if lucky, or when learning something new. But the core concept of flow is that we need to challenge ourselves to a certain level and at the same time being motivated to engage with the activity. So there is an aspect of a bit of intrinsic motivation to flow and high focus. These are some of many preconditions that flow has to be able to happen. I think strengths are not directly plugged in the sense, you need to use your strengths for flow, but they can very much support flow because they give us a lot of energy to endure against the certain challenge. They're intrinsically motivating because when we engage with strengths, we engage with things we are good at. And again, that gives us energy. So in a way, it kind of fuels that motivation bit. It fuels that resilience to keep on engaging with things that's enjoyable but difficult. And I think strengths can really be a good filter which activities might be better activities for us for flow, which things have more potential to pull out our strengths. Because again, flow is all about challenging ourselves a bit, pushing our skills and abilities a little bit higher. And we can do that best in areas in which we already have some abilities and already some skills, and we are already to a certain level good at. So I would say strengths are by no means precondition to flow. We don't have to engage with them to be in flow, but they're definitely a shortcut to flow, something that supports flow, and something that to a certain level triggers flow and makes it easier and fuels it. So it would make a lot of sense to use them together. Thank you for the question. Interesting one.
Cool. A shortcut to achieving a flow state. And this is also what we want to do in training and facilitation, because if our participants are in flow, they will be obviously less on their phones. They will be more immersed in the experience right now and engage more with the content maybe, or the challenges we want to work on in the workshop.
Yeah. They will be ready to push a little bit and challenges themselves harder. So we always talk about this comfort zone, out of comfort zone, and flow is exactly there. It's out of comfort zone, but it's much less effective if we make people go there, and it's much more effective if they're in flow, so they actually want to go there and push their own, I would say, the end of their abilities a little bit further.
Nice. Okay, as we're already talking about floating, let's make a transition to the one thing that I was really amazed to learn from you, because I also dug a lot into positive psychology. I'm deep into strengths practice. But what I learned when engaging with your content was a visual metaphor that apparently you use a lot to bring many of these concepts together. And that is the sailboat metaphor. Can you explain the sailboat metaphor to us?
Sure, it's one of my favorites. I talk about it a lot, most often in its short version. So I'll start with that one. So the idea of sailboat metaphor is just that I usually share it at the beginning, maybe of a workshop or when we talk about strengths. And very often I'll be doing workshops that cover more topics. So we'll not talk about strengths very in depth. We'll do maybe shorter bit where just people dig into some of their strengths. And I love giving this metaphor just as a visual and as an image of why would we work with strengths. And it's funny because I always start with, here is what strengths give us, and list some evidence-based bits, like they make us, using strengths give us more energy, they may, whatever, it puts us closer, it speeds up the learning, it gives us more positive emotions, it just lists these different things, and nobody remembers that part. Sometimes I share it before metaphor, sometimes after, and then I share the metaphor, and everybody remembers the metaphor. It's amazing. So the metaphor basically says, as we are moving through our life, we can imagine that we are like a sailing boat. And when we are that sailing boat and floating somewhere or sailing somewhere in the open seas, we have two important parts. One of them is the hull of the boat, and one of them is our sails. And when we engage with that boat and with the sea around us, we can choose what do we focus on. And one thing we can focus on is the leaks in that hull. And every boat has leaks. If you ever sailed, you know there will be some water on the boat. You cannot overmanage, you cannot perfect enough those leaks. There will always be some bits that you can be fixing forever, and you will just keep on finding the new ones. Or you can do the second thing. And the second thing is you can engage with the sails. And sails means, you open up the sails, they propel you forward. To engage with the sails is enjoyable, it's energetic, it's fun as well. And they're really where our strength is. And they will be able to take us somewhere. So when we engage with the sails, not only do we enjoy, but we also really advance fast and we propel ourselves forward. So in every moment, we can choose which one do we engage with and to what point. And the message is not, let's never engage with the holes. If I have a massive hole in the hull of my boat, I should probably manage that hole and take care of that hole. But what I don't want to do is stay in this micromanaging the holes, overthinking everything I should fix, looking for negative feedback and all the weaknesses that I need to manage and improve, because then I'll never get to a moment that I use sails. And on the other hand, if I focus just managing the big holes and then just focus on those sails, they will take me forward enough that most of the holes won't really matter. So always I want to strive for the balance, but more of my focus should be on the sails. It will make me happier, it will make me more fulfilled, it will give me more energy, and ultimately it will give me better results. So that's the short version, the simple version. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, amazing. I can totally see that, yeah, giving these cognitive-based facts, the science in a way, doesn't stick with participants, but then this sailboat, which has a direction, which has a destination, and which has different things that propel it and that hold it back, that is a very, yeah, I would say a metaphor that we can apply both to personal life in a way. I want to get somewhere, I want to get to a destination, I have my sails, but even to an organizational setting, a team, right? We could also say we have,
Yes.
what do we have in our sails? How can we use the wind? So this is what I love about metaphors, and this one in particular, that it's so versatile.
Yes, and you can even give it to participants to keep on developing it to a certain point. But I think with this one, there are two really useful things. One is also to share really nice photo with this powerful sailing boat under the sails. I think it makes it more memorable. And then the second one is this thing you heard from me as well, that is really acknowledging. It's not about being like, no, there are no leaks, never mind, ignoring you still want to know the weaknesses, name the weaknesses, maybe acknowledge that there is also maybe something that needs to be fixed. But the question is, where is majority of your focus?
Awesome. Yeah, should we show this quickly?
Yes, the more
On
elaborate version.
Yeah, exactly. Let's bring
And
that
maybe I
on
can share
here.
also just in terms of the resources. I discovered this metaphor very long time ago in its short version. And I first discovered it in the book from Robert Biswas Diener a long time ago, maybe 2010 or something, in this short version. But then in 2016, Hugo Alberts, one of the positive psychology researchers and practitioner, he developed it into this more elaborate version. First of all, you can see on this metaphor that things are split in two different colors. And by the way, this is also an image we will share at the end and that you can use. But they're split in two different colors. And the mint one on top, where we have 5 different things, the steering wheel, the destination, the leak, and so on, these are the things that are related to our internal world. So the things that are related to something that's about us, our values, our strengths, or whatnot. And then the 3 blue ones on the bottom part, the water, other boats, and the weather, these are really about external things we cannot control and things we want to still incorporate in our map of the world, but we don't want to necessarily aim to control them or try to control them. Exactly the opposite. We need to meet them where they are. So in this metaphor, we have these 8 different elements, and I'll just name them briefly. We have this compass, which is our internal feelings and emotions and intuitions. We have sails and leaks, which we already named, our strengths and also our weaknesses. Strengths also can include, or sails can also include different resources or effective coping. And when we use this metaphor with someone, we can choose where exactly do we want to go with it. We can just stay with strengths, or we can broaden it a bit also into other resources, ways of coping, and so on. And then we have leaks, which are weaknesses or in some way ineffective coping with different circumstances. You know, what are the habits that are not serving you here? So we can really, again, broaden it a lot or keep it to really what are your, not abilities, but characteristics that don't really help you with this.
Yeah, I guess overused strengths and learned behaviors could also go into the leaks, like things that suck our energy.
Definitely,
right?
yes. Yes, definitely. And I think it's also, it's interesting also. I think it's relevant for every conversation because we can use this metaphor. Maybe we didn't mention this. I use it most often in workshops, can be with a bunch of individuals who work each on their own thing or with a team working on it together. And we can also use it in coaching very well. But within that, we always want to make some conscious choices, not just to take it with this list of things, but think, hey, what is for this team or this group, where should we focus more? What would be more powerful for them? But I'm very with you that one of the areas where I use strengths often is when we talk about energy management or burnout, because that's the cue that the strengths are being not used or used in the wrong way, or people are pushing too much to use their skills and learned behaviors and not their natural strengths. So I think we can talk about strengths in the really under the topic of strengths, but they also fuel and fit into many other topics. We could also pull in this metaphor when talking about values, about goals. I was saying our number 3 is the destination. That's like the goals and wishes. Where are you striving to go? Where are you hoping your strength will take you? And then we also have the steering wheel, which is just needs, values, and meaningful direction in a way. So I think destination, steering wheel, and compass, they kind of overlap a bit. You could tweak them a bit as well. You could even merge them into one conversation, depends how you want to go about it. And then, of course, we have this water, which is reality, the environment, the things that are around us, the things that we are going through. And then we have the weather, which is these uncontrollable circumstances. We can be really lucky and have amazing sunny day and good winds, or we can have the storms, and what are we going to do with that? This is really useful, the weather, when we want to talk about resilience, but also when we want to talk about what's our level of control, what's our circle of influence, what are maybe the things that we are putting in too much effort and that are out of our control in a way. And then finally, we have other boats that can be other people, and they can be our peers or they can be our teammates. So we can even talk about it in the context of team, like, hey, let's work on individual strengths, and now we have our fleet, that goes together. Or we as a team can be a boat. And if we have a fleet, we can have different boats in that fleet. So we can really play with this, how we adjust it to a certain use case. I don't know if that was too elaborate already. Toby, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And when I saw this first, I was wondering, okay, how does that look like in a workshop? Because this seems to be like not even one workshop, but several workshops, an entire workshop or coaching journey. I think this could be because you go into so many topics, but I think it's really powerful. And if you like, I can share the connection that I made immediately when I saw this.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, on a meta level, I think I could take the conversation now into, this made me think of how we have our strengths report, and how we could debrief it with this metaphor. Or is there anything else you want to get in here?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a great idea. I just wanted to share this part about how you can use it more linear, or you can go in bits that you choose.
So when I saw this, it seemed to me that this is a lot, and we could fill several workshops with it. One where we really dig into the destination, the goals that we want to achieve. Another one into the resources, the sales that we can have, and how can we really fill them up. So how does that look like in your practice? Is that always a series of workshops, or how do you size it and cluster it in your work?
Love that question, because I think one of the most tricky things with all the tools, including this one, is that we take them sometimes too rigidly. But in reality, I think the goal is to adapt this to our goal of the workshop, right? So it depends what we want to achieve. So I could use this in the parts of strengths. I could use it, like you're saying, maybe more in life design, life coaching type of a thing. I could use it with the team to discuss their strategy and where are they moving. But I will just say, I see 3 levels on which you can use it. One is just sharing this brief metaphor as an image for things, and then discussing whatever you want to discuss, strengths or whatever, just making it more memorable, more sticky, and frankly, having less resistance from participants to the idea of looking things from more positive side. The second way is to use it in a linear way, and that's what you're saying, the whole session or the whole course, step by step, going through all these different aspects. I rarely use it like that. I do sometimes, but rarely. Many more times I will use it by starting from some bit, maybe sales and leaks, or depends where, or maybe goals, depends where we want to go, and then see what naturally emerges. And I think we can give ourselves as trainers the permission not to be linear and rigid following the framework, but to really dive into what emerges as most relevant in the context of our workshop goal or the coaching goal. So thank you for that question. I think it's really important, because I think otherwise it's easy for people to get tied into a framework. I should use it like this or not use it at all. But I really want to say, hey, own it, adjust it, adapt it, play with it. If some part you don't really understand or it doesn't really resonate, kick it out. Like I said, sometimes I will merge destination, steering wheel, and compass, or some of these elements more into one to simplify it a bit. So we can definitely, or even water and weather. So we can definitely play with this, and I think we should aim to make it very practical. But Toby, I heard that you got some good ideas on how to make this practical in one amazing tool. So I would love to see what have you done there and how did you take it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, so of course, this is again the point, like we had it a few times in this podcast already, where group facilitation and one-on-one coaching meet, I think. And I am mostly on the latter part. And there we have a lot of tools for visual coaching and for strengths, and one of them is our strengths assessment, the strengths discovery. And you've taken it, Mirna. So
Yep.
I brought here your report that, basically has a lot of content. It talks about your signature strengths. Here we can see your top 5, the communicator, inventor, visionary, learner, and motivator. You took a survey where you basically assessed how often do you apply these strengths and does it give you energy or not when applying those. And this gives us a nice report. It has signature strengths, it has the underused strengths, the hidden gems, and the energy drain. So what do you overuse? What is maybe even more a learned behavior, not a real strengths? And I think this is great, or I have seen this do wonders in coaching and also in sort of team building settings. But just like you said earlier, it is also very much a long cognitive report with many words. And this is where it really resonated when you said, I give people the facts about positive psychology, the facts about their strengths, and it doesn't stick. And this is where metaphors come in. And so this is where basically I thought, okay, this could be a really cool way to debrief that report. So what we have here now is we can say start the strengths debrief and then let's work with the sailboat metaphor. And this is where we can basically hop into your very report, but now visualized on a sailboat. So where we have the sails with the 5 strengths that we previously discussed. We have some leaks, maybe weaknesses, unhelpful patterns, overused strengths. And then we also have other boats. So this is also what we saw on the previous report, that you have also asked feedback to other people. They say, okay, this is how I see you, Mirna. This is the strengths I can see in you. We see a nice overlap between also your self-assessed strengths here. And now we have this as a big visual, a big metaphor, and we could go into that with a group or with a single person and explore where is it that we actually want to go. What is happening in life with our team right now? What is our destination? And we can say, okay, let's explore that. Well, where are we right now? What's in the water? How does our reality look like? And of course, we can then go into the sales and dig deeper. Like, what are the strengths that I can see here? And maybe what's also missing in this first assessment. And let's maybe do a bit of a reaction here and let me know, Mirna, what resonates here, what do you miss, and how do you feel about all this?
Yeah, I just want to say first that I took your Metaphor Strengths Discovery report within Inner Journey, the course that I took with you in London. And I did many strengths reports before because obviously I'm focusing on that as well. And I needed to know which is good in what and which one would I recommend for what. And there was one thing particularly that I really enjoyed in your report and that I found so valuable. And I want to recommend it to everyone because of that. And that's the part of actually receiving that feedback as well. Being able to separate what are your insights, what did other name as your strengths, not maybe directly, but in a way, and then also looking them in a merged way. I think this is really helpful to build more self-awareness. And before, when I would be recommending how to dig into your strengths, I would always recommend self-reflection, feedback, and then some of the surveys. And I think in a way your survey brought it all together. So really well done on that, and definitely recommend it to check it out to everyone. I'm sure we can also link it in the episode or find it. So back to the question.
Yeah.
I also love that you keep developing it. And every time we talk, there is a new addition to it and a new version. And now the sailboat is there as well. So I think it's really cool. Okay, cool. In the sales, what resonated? Yeah, I think one thing that I relate to a lot is learner, because that's one strength that always shows up for me. And I think that's the core of who I am, looking what to learn. 3 that were quite interesting were like visionary, motivator, and communicator. I think I do recognize myself in them a lot, but I wouldn't name those as my top strengths from top of my mind. So it was interesting. I think that's also very interesting with strengths, how often they give you vocabulary and permission to claim something as yours. The one that was maybe most curious for me is inventor, because I don't know, I think I have a strong problem solving, engineering background, problem solving part, and strong learning part, looking for new things. But I don't feel like I'm very quick with jumping into new things. You also hear that it says that I'm drained by rigid procedures sometimes, but I also like a bit of also putting things in place and structures and so on. And I don't feel being very strong in experimenting. Depends, but not so much. I'm more like, yeah, let me nerd out on everything I can find about it and then eventually maybe experiment. I'm not like jump first and then learn how to swim. So I find this one, Inventor, to be really interesting. Also just reflecting on it, discussing it with my body on a course a little bit, because they also actually had Inventor, but they were exactly the opposite. Jump first, experiment a lot, do quick things, make quick mistakes. That's not me. So it was very interesting to reflect also on the shades, how the same strength can be packed in different ways, show up in different ways. But that's one I would not claim as mine. And then when I reflect on it, I find elements, but it wouldn't be intuitively on my list, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, if we check the other boats, it's not there. It would have been nice to see it there now, because I can definitely see it, like the way you came up with this sailboat. I mean, you didn't come up with it, but the way you adopted the sailboat metaphor, that definitely shows the learner, right? And then how you turn it into a Miro template, that for me is also a lot of invention happening there. But either way, what I also can see in your reaction now is that strengths work and also metaphors, and that's why I love combining them, is a lot about the meaning we give to things, right? Of course, inventor, it's just a word. We can look at it from this or that angle, but in a way, what it's supposed to do, I think, in a coaching setting or also in a group workshop, is to give us a language, to claim it, as you say, and then also to embrace it and live it in a way. Take this into our subconscious, maybe to some extent, and have it top of mind. Okay, I can have this invention resource. I'm stuck now in this problem. What can I do? Let me actually access my invention resource, right?
Yeah, I love that. So often strengths are our blind spots because they're so us. I think motivator is that for me. Like I never think of myself as a motivator, yet I get excited about things easily and that energy gets contagious easily. And I see where that is coming from, but I would never name myself like that because it's so much me that I don't think about it like that. So I think it's also interesting to have this. It's not blind spots like we don't know we are that, but it's blind spots in sense we are so much that we think everybody is that. And it's not like our thing, it's just a thing. And I think that was for me also a long time ago when I played with some of the first strengths reports. It was like always my top 2 or 3 strengths. I would be like, oh, that's like a thing? Doesn't everyone, like for example, for me in one of the reports, there is this strength called activator. And it's like this being quick on doing and creating things and like pushing things forward and being very proactive. And that's very me because I get excited easily about things. And for me, that was like, what do you mean? Everybody does things. It's not like a thing. So I think it's interesting, this vocabulary. But just to go back to the inventor thing, I just realized something that's also maybe interesting. And that's how they work together. Because I was saying, I do think I'm quick on problem solving and I push for problem solving and quick on sometimes incorporating new things and learning, but not quick on experimenting. And I'm wondering now, how much does that have to do with visionary? Because I'm very goal-oriented and I'm always like, where are we going? And what are we trying to build here? And I don't build things just for fun. I build things because I want to create something and I believe in something. And I'm thinking now maybe that's the part where they pull in together. And maybe that's why the part of inventor that's not serving the visionary, it's just not that present.
If the visionary persona in you doesn't see the value, then why experiment and why try something that maybe doesn't lead anywhere?
So maybe they should just be swapped in dominance.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do in strengths coaching, right? Like decide, what do I want to tune up and what do I want to tune down a bit. Cool. So if we go back to the big picture of our sailboat, before we wrap up, I would still like to learn a bit from you. How do you now bring this into a workshop room where you work with a group? Let's say we are working now on the destination or the compass parts. So after having already elaborated about strengths, what are the reflection questions or the guidance that you give to work on this part?
Yeah, I will usually not stay blindly on the metaphor and dive in there. I will usually move deeper really into goals, and I'll work with it, or values, and I'll work with it in a similar way that we would work in any workshop that was on the goals. So for example, maybe I would ask something like, well, it really depends. Usually with goals, I start by asking a few questions to warm up. What do you really enjoy doing? What are you grateful for in your life? What is important to you about your life, about the world, and whatnot? And then from there, what are you good at? Incorporating strengths, following the Ikigai, the model where we have what you're good at, what you like doing, and what are the problems that you want to solve in the world. Kind of going down the track of these three, exploring each with a few questions, and then looking for an overlap. And then when working with goals, I'm going to always go from big ones first. So that's going to depend on the context. If it's more individual, probably we're going to discuss like lifetime goals and give some time to reflect on that and so on. Then I'll work with 3 levels, like lifetime 5-1 or lifetime 10-1 or something like that. So I do find 3 years to be a strong sweet spot where people can think big because it's long enough, but at the same time, they don't disconnect because it's not as far as 5 years. So I think that's an interesting one maybe to play, to incorporate 3 years somewhere in these 3 steps that we are working on.
Yeah, I was just double checking if I got that right, because what you described sounded a lot like a method that I know as backward goal setting, where you would ask a group, let's dream big, let's let go of our leaks, of all the issues that we have right now, and imagine everything is great in 5 years. How does the world look like? Okay, now that we have this, what would needs to be true in 3 years? And now what does that mean for our very next year, the concrete short-term goals we need to set? So kind of working backwards from an ideal future.
Yeah, before that, I'll often or do Ikigai or have some of more dreamy exercises. And one dreamy exercise can be ideal day, when they're just journaling for 10 minutes or maybe discussing with someone, how does their ideal day look like in like 5 years from now or 1 year from now, or depends how big we want to think and how big I think they're ready to think based on how they come into the workshop and what I discover about them before. So one is ideal day. Another one is rocking chair. That's one I use really often because I feel it's the broadest. And that's when you imagine yourself as 90-year-old sitting on your veranda, all happy, all at peace. You feel there is nothing left that you have to do in life. You're content with everything. And you think back at your life. What are you thinking about? And what are you thinking at? I actually have also a guided version of that exercise on Happiness Academy YouTube channel. So if you Google Happiness Academy rocking chair YouTube, it will pop at you. But it's also a famous exercise. You can find it also elsewhere. So that's one. Or the third one, which I don't use often, but can be very powerful, it's the funeral speech. To actually write a speech that somebody showing up at your funeral would say about you. And then it's often useful to switch different roles, like your friend, your colleague, and your family maybe. What did they say? I find this one to be disturbing for many people, but it also kicks the butts sometimes. It can be also quite useful when we feel, but I think it's more to be used when we feel people need to be shaken up a bit, that they're settling too much, that they're taking it easy. Then I think that one can be quite powerful. I think I would more often go for the rocking chair. So we have ideal day, rocking chair, or funeral speech. Not all of them, one of them. Just to open up that creative thinking before people have to commit. Because the moment we ask them write your goals is the moment we ask them to commit already. And then you know how it goes. Everybody is, I don't want to put something too big there, or I don't want to fail or whatnot.
Yeah, nice. That was immediately my thought when I heard you describing the rocking chair exercise. Now I was like, this is a nice, less threatening variant of the funeral speech. Cool. Okay. Wow. And so out of that phase, we come with a goal that is more or less clear, even either long-term visionary or maybe also short-term concrete, or both ideally. Which other parts of a sailboat workshop would you like to highlight? What do you think is still interesting to dig into?
Yeah, I think maybe just to add also here is how we can cross-connect them all together. Because here we can also, in ideal day, we can say, hey, and keep your top 5 strengths. How do you want to use them in that ideal day? Or maybe also when we are actually mapping down the goal. In the next step, when we talk about how will you put it in practice, which strengths and resources will help you with that? I think it gives a lot of kind of confidence and energy around it. Which ones to highlight? Can we zoom out so we see is inviting me?
We have the water, which is the environment. We have the steering wheel, which are needs and values. The compass, your intuition. The other boats, or the destination we covered now. And
Yeah.
then finally the weather, which are the circumstances we cannot control.
Yeah, oh, I don't know, tough call. I'm thinking maybe the steering wheel. What do you think? Or the weather? Which
Awesome.
one would you prefer?
Okay, let's go for the weather, because that I think is again another perspective that is not coming from
Yeah.
us, but outside. What's happening in our environment?
I think weather will much more often show up in a conversation when we ask what are the obstacles than what is supporting you. Ideally, it should show up with both, but I think much more often it will be about the weather is not good and we can't do anything about it, and my poor boat is hijacked, and what am I going to do? But I think we can see it from both sides. I think we can ask something like, what is working for you? What is working against you? I think in the weather chapter, I will often, again, if we're not working in that linear way, that we go one step at a time, I think this is one that most commonly will emerge spontaneously. Because when you talk about needs and values or wishes or intuition and feedback from the environment, inevitably something will show up that's, but this is preventing me, but I can't do it because of this. And I think there are two very interesting questions there. I think for me, that's also like the ultimate resilience question. I say, if you want to shortcut the resilience, you have no time to discuss it with someone. This is your ultimate question. What is, out of my control? What is within my control? And what will I do about the part that's within our control? And we want to move then to action. Because what happens when we obsess over the things we cannot control? It happens that we waste a huge amount of energy and we ended up demotivated and disempowered, because we keep banging our head against the wall in something we really cannot change. So we just feel more helpless. So we want to avoid that. At the same time, people are often quick to judge that something is out of their control when it's maybe not. So I think interesting question. Even more it would be so in coaching, but I do more workshops, so I can't always have enough feedback, should I ask it or not. But the interesting question can be, is this really out of your control? Should this really be in the weather? Or maybe is it a need or intuition or feedback? Is it part of your compass? So I think that is the first question to go with, is really what's under my control, what's not. What's not, we put into the weather. But then the interesting one is, does that really belong there? Are there ways to see, to influence it? And then amazing weather question is to put it back to positive, of course, in positive psychology. What are your resources? Who is supporting you? What are your external resources? What relationships can you get support from in terms of emotion, in terms of action? Who are other people who can support you with this? Which resources do you have from your past, or from your strengths, or from previous experiences, or from your knowledge? So all these internal resources. And these then would go more in other parts. But if we start from there, they will usually grow also into external resources. I also have this option or that option. So I think with the weather, we often want to recognize that it's not as separate thing as it seems. It's not the clear line, not under my control, totally under my control. That's a vague line to explore. Which of the internal resources can also slip over into the external? Which of the external obstacles are actually partially internal obstacles? I think this very relates to also our beliefs and really questioning our mindset and beliefs about things. And we will have then people who are too much trying too hard in things they cannot control, and the opposite, people who downplay because they don't think they have necessarily control.
Yeah. So what I hear is that the weather part will most likely be actually brought up by your participants, by your clients, because they come to you with a belief about the world that whatever I want to do, my destination, it's hard, it's even impossible because of this and that factor that is outside my control. And then the weather gives us the chance to challenge that, maybe. Are these beliefs really true? And then also kind of redirect the focus to what is in my control and what maybe do we just accept and live with it. And also what outside my control is maybe actually working in my favor. Are there people I can have access to? Are there other resources that we can dig into?
Yeah, you caught that perfectly. There are really three big things. I didn't think of it like that before, but there are really three big things within weather. One is questioning it. Is this really out of my control? Second one, working with accepting it or letting it go if it is out of our control. And third one, also finding positive things that are supporting us, even though they're not internal resources, but that are external in a way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
This is fun. Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to add just one thing, that if they don't bring in the weather spontaneously, if they don't mention the obstacles or challenges or whatnot, then of course we want to bring it in. Because if we don't discuss the obstacles, then people will probably clash with those obstacles in their real life after the workshop or after coaching, and they'll get discouraged in the pathway to their fulfilling their goals. So we do want to definitely, like in any good coaching, we definitely want to also in the workshop call this out and say, okay, what about things that are maybe obstacles and that are supporting you and your resources? When I don't work with this metaphor, this will be two very distinct questions for me, obstacles and resources. But I think when we work with this model, we can bring them together.
Yeah. That's also why in this template here, I placed it towards the end, because I thought, this is when we make the plan more concrete, when we do kind of managing obstacles that we already anticipate. How do we want to deal with that? But yeah, of course, it's likely going to come up already earlier in the process.
Yeah, too early can really sabotage the dreamy phase, right? So we do want to keep it for implementation part.
Yeah, this is, I think, also the grow model in a way also says that we want to go into goals before we go into reality to kind of not be clouded right away in where are we right now and what are the issues. Or solution-focused coaching, I think, also has this. It has an external action phase where we invite the client to maybe externalize how they see the problem. But above all, we want to direct the focus to what's in our control, what resources do we have, etc. Yeah, to slowly but surely wrap up. Is there anything, Mirna, that you think we didn't sufficiently talk about when it comes to positive psychology, strengths, sailboats? Anything
there is
that we
so
missed?
much more to discover for sure. But no, I don't have one specific thing in mind. I would just say the way to implement it more is to experiment with it and maybe try it in some moderate version or in more safer, like with everything that we embrace that's new to us, to just test it out a bit. Maybe test it out for yourself, journal a bit on each of the bits, notice which one is unclear, and definitely feel free to get in touch. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can find Toby even easier. So feel free to also reach out and tell us if you had some insights or ways of using this or questions that you're not clear with. But I would say also make it yours, not taking it as a rigid framework, but playing with it a bit.
Awesome. So embrace the inventor in a way.
Exactly. Experiment.
Cool. And would you like to share any specific resources or places people can find you?
Yeah, sure. That would be great. So I think it's easiest to find everything I do these days, especially for trainers, facilitators, coaches on Trainers Toolbox. And there are three areas that I'm sharing it there. One is podcast, one is the blog, and one is newsletter, like a weekly newsletter. So that's three different ways, depends what kind of content you like. Do check them out. I hope we can link them in the episode description. And in the podcast, there were two episodes that tie in strongly into what we discussed today. One is the Sailboat Metaphor, and one is the strengths overused, which is about the dark side of the strengths. And I'll definitely be building up more. I really have so many tools in mind from positive psychology to share that you can definitely keep an eye. I am building these two Miro boards as well for the same two topics. I hope they'll be out on Miroverse by 1st of August, might be a bit later. But yeah, eventually we will link them here as well. And you can always look on Miroverse for Trainers Toolbox and see what's there from different positive psychology exercises. And then on LinkedIn, that's the easiest place to find me, easiest place to connect and ask something. So please do also give us any feedback to what we forgot to mention or what we elaborated on too much. So we both know for future episodes as well.
I can't say it better. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mirna. This was fun.
Sorry. We should probably also mention the inner journey as one of the amazing places to learn about strengths. Do you want to share it? Do you want me to share it?
Go, Mirna. Give us the participant perspective.
Yeah, cool. So I joined the inner journey in London some month ago, and I'll be facilitating in Zagreb in November. And Inner Journey is like a MetaFox 3-day immersion into working with images, pictures, different tools. And it comes with a bunch of amazing tools, but it also comes with 2 themes, emotions and strengths. So one of the 3 days, it's really dedicated, not just what we discussed today, but way beyond that, to exploring the report, to discovering different cards, different tools for the strengths, to have some really interesting conversations about our own strengths. And everything about it, how it's built as an event, it's about us immersing ourselves as a participant to really experiment with these tools, but then ultimately being able to use those tools really effectively with our own clients or participants. So I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. You can also join me in Zagreb in November, or anyone else from other events around Europe and the world, because they're all amazing events. If you feel like strengths and working with images and emotions are some of the topics you want to dive in deeper. Toby, if you have anything to add
Exactly.
that I forgot.
Yeah, I think what I loved about this session today is how it combines metaphors and strengths into one tool. And this is exactly what we do also in the Inner Journey on MetaFox Online. So check those out at metafox.eu/academy or metafox.online.